Hello, I'm Anabella Wewer and this is Mosaic Arts Online. In this course, we go beyond the fundamental principles of andamento laid out in my first course and explore andamento as language, using variation in our cuts and how we lay our tessera to achieve entirely different effects that I am relating to language, grammar, dialects, and accents. I will be using letter forms as the building block of language, using typography and grammar as allegory for mastering the languages of Mosaic, from classical setting to very modern and free ways to setting while still maintaining the order that classical andamento and even strict andamento provides to a work in Mosaic. We will go over rules and principles of how andamento is used most effectively in backgrounds and around complex forms, and I lay out the challenges and advantages of a multitude of setting styles to help you make andamento lines with distinct characteristics and different flavors. We have a lot to consider and a lot of samples to look at, so let's get going.
Anabella, thank you so much for coming to Mosaic Arts Online again. This is such a great course.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yay. So we have a lot to cover here, so let's dive right in. The first thing I want to ask you is, this may look a little different to some of our students, like what's laid out here, but let's talk about the letters. What exactly is going to connect this to that?
So I am a graphic designer and a typographer before anything else. And to me, each tessera is a little bit like a letter. Mm-hmm. As I looked at different people's work through the years, I can see how the way everybody builds their lines is a little bit like handwriting. Yeah. And so the connection to language was pretty obvious to me. Yeah. And I do speak 4 languages, and the different ways of handling andamento sort of became an allegory for languages and how one expresses oneself, definitely from artist to artist, but I have found that depending on what I'm working on and what the message of my piece is or the theme of my piece is, I tend to set a little bit differently. Right. And so letters as the building block of language became obvious. In my typography practice, the space in between letters or even which typeface I use, they mean very different things. Typefaces have personality. Yeah. So you wouldn't use a script to make a headline. You wouldn't use a very funky type to write something very important or very serious. And so andamento is the same way to me. Yeah,
and that's kind of what you're talking about here. We see like the really large pieces of stone behind us, and it gets smaller, and the different sort of andamento on the whale's tail that she'll get into. But that's just it. It's like taking something that is a language in any language that you speak and really putting it into any kind of tessera, smalty stone, which you go over and everything. Yeah. So this is such a great course, but can you talk a little bit about how it's a stepping stone up from your original course, the classical andamento and modern?
So in my original course, we talked about the principles of andamento and how we split lines and give it them dimension and how to form lines. But then those lines have to do something else. They need to go around shapes as they do there, and how we handle when those lines meet other lines and when they intersect. And so the principles are obviously the same, but they are applied to how we use them and how we build lines and how we get in and out of situations that we encounter, as we said. And then further, just different textures and techniques, which I am sort of relating to accents, to build narrative. So when the tessera are set at different distances from each other, they're saying something different than when they are all set pretty straight.
Right. And so what everyone should understand with this course is it is not a project course. You will not make a project in this course, but you will learn all of these techniques that lead to all of these different lines. And so explain a little more of like what the step-by-step is of what you're really going to get out of this course. I mean, you have some beautiful work behind us here that you created in Italy, but this is really like the learning. This is the notebook. This is how you go to school, and that's your notebook right there to take your notes.
Yeah. So on this sample here, which is a whale tail or fluke, I laid out 4 different, very distinct ways of setting, going from the very classical Roman language to a more modern way to set, and there's a lot of do's and don'ts in this in these samples. So just be aware that there are definitely things there that should not be happening in a mosaic, but this was the easiest way for me to convey that message. It's a lot simpler to look at something and point it out rather than me be building something, which takes a lot of time. On the course, I work against this line. This line has a lot of character. There's a lot of variation going on there. And I spent some time setting dry, but just to show how one can handle a line that has so much personality and have to come up against and around curves in Andamento. Yeah.
Thank you so much. You have brought just another gem of a course here that people can really learn from after possibly taking your other course, or they can dive into this without the other course. It's just a great tool to have, and I can't thank you enough.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
I'm so excited.
Me too.